Hi, my name is Adam Mosseri. I'm the VP of Product for Newsfeed at Facebook. And today I'd like to talk to you a bit about our mission, how Newsfeed works, and what this means for you as publishers. Starting with our mission, the context in which we live is a world where there's more and more information for us to consume every single day, but only so much time that we have in which to do that. And so we believe that our role on Newsfeed is to help people connect with the stories that matter to them most. And so, how does Newsfeed work? Before I go into the mechanics of the system, I thought I'd start by pointing out that when publishers first post content into Newsfeed, or every time that they do, at that moment actually nothing happens. It's not until the people that follow that publisher open up Facebook that we look at that story and all the other stories that we could show them, and then try to figure out what they are most interested in. And so, this is to say that the system, even at a technical level, is very, very user-centric. And we believe that focusing on the user experience means that over the long run, more and more people will use Facebook, they'll spend more and more time on it, and that'll be good for them, be good for Facebook, and be good for publishers. And so, another thing that I'd like to call out is the most important input into what you see in your newsfeed is who you decide to friend and what publishers you've decided to follow. When you first sign up for Facebook, your newsfeed is totally empty. It's a blank slate. And then slowly but surely over time, you friend the people you care about, you follow the publishers you're interested in, and you build your own personalized experience. And so then you show up at Facebook one morning, and you have a bunch of different stories that you could be interested in. And then our job is try to figure out which ones matter to you most. And so these are actually a bunch of stories that have been in my feed. You can see a Warriors highlight from a recent game, an article from a publisher, a bunch of family photos. I recently had my first child. His name is Nico, so lots and lots of baby photos in my feed right now. And what we do on Newsfeed is try to figure out which of these stories are most interesting to me. And we do this by looking at each story individually, one at a time. This is a real story from my brother Emil. He lives in New York. And it's a photo of my father, my son, my brother, and me. And we look at this and we try to figure out how likely am I, Adam, to like this story, to share this story, to spend time reading this story. These sort of actions we think of as proxies to knowing that I'm interested in this story. And we predict how likely I am to perform one of these actions based on a number of things, based on who posted this story. This is my brother Emil. He's in a band. He posts content about his band all the time. I like and comment on his posts. And so we start to infer that I'm interested in Emil's content in general. Another thing we look at is what kind of content is it? This is a photo. I like photos a lot. I post a lot of photos. I comment on a lot of photos. Another reason to infer that I'm interested in this story specifically, and that I might click on it or I might comment on it. We look at how many interactions are there in the post. So if there's two posts from, let's say, the BBC Sports in the UK, and one has thousands of likes and comments, and the other one only has like 3 or 4, we're going to infer that the former is much more interesting than the latter. We look at when this post was originally created. We know that recency is a really important signal for relevance, though we think it's not the only important signal. So an example would be, I have a cousin, her name's Margaret, and she actually recently got engaged. If she had posted that on Facebook last Friday, and I hadn't been to Newsfeed since then, and this morning my brother had posted a picture of, I don't know, a breakfast sandwich, I'm probably more interested in Margaret's engagement story than my brother's breakfast sandwich, even though her story is a bit older. So hopefully, if we're doing our job on Newsfeed, Margaret's story would show up at the top, maybe followed by then my brother's sandwich. And so what we do, or the end product of all of this for each story is what we call a relevancy score. And that score is very specific to me. So the same story might be in a couple of friends' feeds. There's Fiji, Will, and Julie. They're all friends with my brother on Facebook. They might have different scores because we think they are different levels of interest in this photo of me and my brother and my dad, and Nico. So we do this for every single story. So if you open up Facebook one morning and there's a link from a publisher, a video from a family member, and a photo from a friend, we're going to come up with a score for each story, and then we're going to order those stories by how interesting we think they are. Once you read them, they get locked into place. And then if you leave, and let's say you come back an hour later, we're going to go through the entire process again. Look at all the stuff you have not seen that's been recently posted, figure out how interesting we think those stories are to you, and then order them accordingly. And so this is mechanically how Newsfeed works. But as important as how it works is how do we know if we're doing a good job? How do we define success? Let's say we launch ranking changes all the time. We launch changes to the design of newsfeed on a regular basis. How do we know if any given change is responsible, is something that we should actually launch to our entire user base? Well, we look at a high level at two things: what people do and what people say. What people do are things like, are they liking more? Are they sharing more? Are they spending more time on Facebook? Are they commenting more with their friends? If they're doing these types of actions a bit more, that's an indication that we're creating some value. But we know that these things aren't everything. Maybe you're seeing a post that's a sad post. Maybe a high school friend's dog passed away. You might not feel comfortable liking or commenting on that, but maybe it's interesting to you. Which is why we've invested so much in something we call the Feed Quality Program, which is a combination of two things. Something we call the Feed Quality Panel, which is a program where we have a lot of people who spend time organizing their stories from the ones that they find most interesting to the ones that they find least interesting. And then we can compare their order to our order. That's the panel. We also have online surveys. Tens of thousands of these get filled out a day. It looks something like this, where we ask people how interested they are in a specific story. We do this in over 30 languages all over the world. And we can compare how interested they said they were to how interested we thought they would be. And again, we try to get better at predicting this over time. Now, even with all of this work on ranking and on quality and all of this experimentation, we know that we don't always get things right, that we make mistakes. Which is why it's really important that we invest a lot in controls for people. Things like following and friending, making sure that these actions are really understood and widely adopted. Unfollowing. If you've never unfollowed someone, I highly recommend you trying it. Maybe you have a kooky aunt who posts, I don't know, funny photos that you're not interested in, or maybe a publisher no longer really posts stuff that you like. If you unfollow them, your newsfeed experience will get more interesting. Hide. You can hide any story on any platform, and we'll try to show you less similar content in the future. Or see first. If you don't know what see first is, it's a feature that allows you to select a set of people, or publishers actually, that you find the most interesting, for whom you want to make sure that they show up at the top of your newsfeed every single time they post. These types of controls, I think, give people a way to correct us when we get things wrong and to just make their newsfeed more relevant over time. So what does this mean for you as publishers? Well, a few things I'd like to encourage you to do. First, write compelling headlines. Not clickbaity headlines, but headlines that give people a real sense of the content that's behind that click. We know that people really enjoy this type of content, and we do what we can to make sure it does well in the system. Avoid overly promotional content. We know people don't love getting bombarded with promotional content, so try not to post too much of it because your audience might get less interested in your publishing and in your content over time. Try things. This is the most important thing. If I could leave you with one thing, it would be to experiment and try things. What's best for your audience is probably not best for a different audience or a different publisher's audience. So experiment, try long form, try short form, try video, try different tones, and then look at your publisher tools to figure out what's resonating with the people that follow your publication. A lot of you are already probably familiar with publisher tools, but if you would bear with me for a second, I'd like to call out one recent feature we added called audience optimization. This allows you to tell us a set of people who you think will be particularly interested in your content. So let's say you're a local bakery in San Francisco and you're posting, I don't know, a how-to video for how to make muffins. You can let us know that your post is about baking and that it's about food and that it might be interesting to people who have those topical interests. And then we'll use that as one of the things that we consider when trying to figure out how interesting this post is to all of your followers. The inverse is also true. You can use audience restrictions. Let us know who you don't think will be interested in this content. And then most importantly, insights based on this feature. You can look at what's working and what's not, and then experiment and iterate and make things better as you move on. Lastly, two things I want to leave you with, both plugs. One is the media blog, which is a great resource to use if you want to look for best practices for any given vertical. And the other is the Newsfeed FYI blog, where we explain every major change we make to Newsfeed, why we did it, and how it should affect both publishers and users. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time.